we're back with more on News Talk Saga 960. So very glad you could join us on this edition of the Mark Petronis Show. And it looks like cancel culture has claimed another institution, a long-time institution, Ryerson. Wow, how long have they been around? Well, the name's gone and it's being replaced with something else. And to tell us all about that is Joe Warmington, longtime journalist, veteran over at the Toronto Sun, where he's been writing about this stuff many times in the past. Kind of a sad day, I think, Joe. I mean,
well,
no more Ryerson. We've all known Ryerson's been around for decades.
Yeah, it's outrageous that they have taken away the name Ryerson. I mean, Ryerson in Toronto and downtown Toronto, it's just stupid. Next thing you know, they're going to be changing Yonge and Dundas. Oops, yeah, I forgot we're doing that too. Yeah. Cancel culture just is conquering and is destroying. It's not just that; it's basically an erosion of history. Ryerson University, Ryerson College from our generation is iconic, and obviously, particularly in our business, the great journalism school and television broadcasting, all the great people that come out of there, but many other things too. When they were ripping down, first they were throwing the red paint on Egerton Ryerson's statue on the campus, and then they just basically turned a blind eye and let them rip it down. And then as usual, the council culture leaders like the premier and the mayor and the prime minister and people like that just let it happen, and basically they've changed it. It's now going to be called Toronto Metropolitan University or Metropolitan Toronto University. It doesn't have a ring to it to me. In fact, we don't even call Toronto Metro Toronto anymore. I haven't heard that term since.
All right, so it's going to be Toronto Metro University. I mean, that's like sort of the Washington Football Club,
Yeah, it's so generic.
It's a generic, so it's like how generic and bland can we get, right?
It's a holding pattern. I just did one the other day where they took down the Sir Johnny MacDonald. I think I talked to you about it, and that was a school in Brampton, and they've renamed it for a First Nations water walker, situation, which would have been fine for a new school, but to sort of replace Sir Johnny MacDonald school that had been there forever, I mean, obviously you could pick apart anybody.
Yeah, including Pierre Elliott Trudeau. I mean,
yeah,
you can look at why don't they start tearing his statues down? I mean, he was there during many of the issues with.
There's a petition for that. There's a petition for that right now in Vaughan, and of course I'm opposed to that. I don't want to see the statue of Pierre Elliott Trudeau taken down there, or the name of the Montreal airport taken away for all the things that Pierre did, good and bad. He was prime minister for 16 years and an important person in Canadian history. He wasn't perfect, but they've named the school after him. They've got the statue up for him, and leave it there. It's the same thing with Sir Johnny MacDonald. I mean, Sir Johnny MacDonald in his first term, he had to resign over a scandal about, I think it was about the railway or something like that. The government got into it and he took the hit for it. And then he made a big comeback and he became prime minister for 5 more years after that. And I think that that's very symbolic, what I'm saying, because, Mark, in life, people make mistakes. And as long as it's no one hurt kind of mistake, you know what I mean? You should be able to come back and make amends, or a little bit of time goes by, you learn your lesson, whatever it is. That's part of life. And the way that they've got it set up now is that you can make a mistake by, something you've actually done wrong, or maybe accidentally done wrong, or said the wrong thing that's been misconstrued, all these things. And the punishment's the same. You're canceled. And, this is really something. But anyway, Egerton Ryerson was a very religious man. I think of that guy McGill. I think it's James McGill in Montreal. They're going to replace that name too. They've taken his statue down. I'm glad I showed it to my son last summer when we were there. We went over to McGill in Montreal because he wants to go there, and we looked at the statue. And I told him, don't be surprised if they take it down. And the thing that I'm really nervous about with this thing, I don't know if I'm nervous about it because I don't think that the left make me nervous as much as I realize they're going to do all these things. But when it's the Queen's turn to go to heaven, they're going to tear those statues down and all that stuff on the the $20 bill, and they're going to even go as far as to remove
Well,
us
yeah, I
from.
mean, the royals are going to definitely get theirs because of look at what Meghan Markle has said about the racism that has been a problem in the royal family. So
It's funny,
that
this guy.
I-
We have to have a grudging respect for Piers Morgan. You can send him the link to this,
yeah,
but it's interesting. Trump is the biggest interview that you can get, and yet you're not allowed to have Trump on Twitter. You're not allowed to say his name or anything like that. And yet, I mean, the headlines are all over the place. He gets it. It's like there's nobody bigger in the world that he could get. And so it's fascinating to me how it works. I mean, so why don't they just let people do what they do, and and this kind of thing. I don't know what you can say about it, but that's a sad day to see Ryerson go down like that. I think of my old friend
yeah,
Christy Blatchford, who was a
yeah.
graduate there. I don't know. I wish she was alive because I don't think she'd go for this.
Let's get your take on Musk and Twitter. You're writing about it in pages of the Toronto Sun.
Yeah.
I don't see how you could see this as a bad thing, personally. Although
Well, of
there's a
course it's
lot of
not.
squawking. I mean,
No,
all your colleagues in the mainstream media, Joe, a lot of them are saying, "Hey, I'm out of here." I mean, I don't believe it.
they like the ones that are out of there. I mean, no journalist is on there because of any particular reason. You have to be on there. It's kind of like having a phone or having a tape recorder or a camera. It's a utility, and so it is a great tool. I heard this guy, Professor Jeffrey Dworkin. I know he's a good professor, journalism expert, and one of the greats in the business. I, to be honest with you, I don't remember him as a reporter or an editor, but apparently this is one of the greats. And he was talking about saying something along the lines that journalism, you can't just have somebody to write and comment on what they think. It needs to be vetted. It has to go through a process. And I've heard him interviewed before talking about how we have to tell these reporters on the ground that there's a bigger picture than the emotions that you're feeling on the scene. And of course, when you have that kind of mindset, it means that everything is censored or edited or tempered or whatever you want to call it. And I don't think that anybody thinks that you should just go on and say something outrageous or what have you, hate speech and these kinds of things. Of course, there's always been there's no tolerance for any of that stuff, and you can deal with those things on a case-by-case basis. But what's happened with Twitter is basically they only allow an opinion that's liberal and Democrat, and they prove that by who they've banned from it. And you're not allowed to question anything. You can't have a conversation. So if you've got something on climate change, and there's some people that were banned for this saying, hey, we did a survey on it and we show that the planet is not heating up or whatever it is, well, that doesn't fit with the narrative, so now you're banned from Twitter. Same thing with the vaccines, and again, why not do what Elon Musk wants to do, which is to say throw it out there and have a debate about it. You can't have hate speech or these kinds of things. Obviously they need to mute that stuff. That's no different than regular standards that we have here when I'm on your show. If I start cussing and being rude or inconsiderate, I think you're going to edit it out or you're going to call me out on it, whatever. So Twitter should be like that too, where most people are good. They have different diverse opinions. That's a positive. I mean, how many people have you known in your life, Mark, that have been hardcore liberal? You don't agree on anything, but you still go golfing or fishing with them, or they're family members that you sit around the table at Christmas or what have you. So that's the way
it's gotten a little more uncomfortable over the years. I mean, it's gotten I think it's become more heated now. And now
but that's because
here's a story here's a story now by the CBC ran this human rights groups warn that freedom of expression should not come at the cost of other human rights. So it's a zero-sum game for these people. If you have more free speech, then somebody else has to pay the price. That's the way these lunatics think, describing free speech absolutist. So that's how they're taking. That's how they're going after Musk, is by calling him a free speech absolutist. I mean, these people are. But the irony is, Joe, that they posted that story on Twitter. So I responded with the obvious question: well, why are you still posting on Twitter then? I mean, if that's how you feel about it, if you think it's potentially a risk, an attack on human rights, then, why are you still on the platform? As far as I'm concerned.
Well, it's a good point. Listen, let's face it, the Elon Musk winning this thing is a win for the good guys when there's not many. And the left, their response to it is because they're used to winning, and they win all the time. And in this case, this is a victory for Elon Musk and people that are all for free speech.
But it's a bad week for the woke, though. I mean, if you consider Disney and what Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, has done over there, so he's kicked their ass. And then you've got Twitter as well. And so you've got Netflix tanking, losing 40% of its value. I mean, here's a woke content.
And the number one, CNN, their streaming line went down.
CNN Plus toast. I mean, that's the other thing. So it's been a bad week for the woke. I mean, is this a trend that you expect will continue?
I think so, because I think that the public, as they sort of peel away their fear, because they're afraid of kind of being canceled or called out, these kinds of things, or, arrested like Tamara Lynch was, and this kind of thing. So, as they sort of lose their fear, they might start to realize that, basically they don't have a lot of faith in people that want to destroy everybody for everything. It's like the Glorious Sons, the band, have that song called "A War on Everything," and that's kind of how it feels sometimes.
What do you make of this liberal hack being appointed to oversee the review of the government's imposition of the Emergencies Act? At first, they said they weren't going to release any information citing cabinet confidentiality, and then they say, okay, well, we're going to appoint this guy and we'll work with him. So they found somebody they can work with.
They appointed him on the 60th day, so they had 60 days to do it, and they waited till day 60 to do it. And then there's a person that was a big fundraiser or a donor, at least, to the Liberal Party. What a surprise. We've seen it before. I saw it with the G20. Basically, these are fixers. Now let's give the guy a chance and see what he does do, because there's nothing worse than labeling somebody. He might listen to that evidence and go, you know what, he might do it. I if that happens, so I'll let you know. But I am not holding my breath. I know that I was in Ottawa. I saw it, and I didn't see any trouble there. And I did see some other things that weren't comfortable to me, like the stomping of people under the horses, and a few other things, including that business of the police actually going to a woman's farm and telling her, they didn't like her social media activity and she might want to reconsider going to that event. That's a pre-crime kind of thing. There's a lot of things wrong with what happened in February there, and it wasn't the truckers that did those wrong things.
No, absolutely not. But I think there's a lot of cynicism around the appointment. And
absolutely.
Obviously the government. And then you have the RCMP coming out saying that we were going to lay some charges in the Aga Khan matter. We were thinking about charging the prime minister with fraud, but among other things, they said it would not be in the public's interest to charge him. So,
it's in the public's interest to
talk about the
charge
most
Randy
cynical
Hillier.
view.
Why
is it not in the public's interest to impose the same level, the same standard of justice on somebody who's a prime minister as well as you and me? I mean, what's going on here?
liberals good and conservatives bad, and that's just how it is. That's how they look at it. That's why Randy Hillier is before the courts for doing nothing. That's why Pat King is still in jail. It's over 2 months he's been in jail, and his charges are nothing. I mean, it's all trumped up. Tamara Leach was, whatever it was, 16 or 17 days in jail. And yet,
absolutely outrageous.
I covered lots of violent offenders that were out on bail in one day. So if you're liberal, you're on the inside group, and if you're not with them, then they come after you and they destroy you. That's just how it works. That's
Joe Warmington joining us on Saga 960 on the Marc Petrone Show. You're working on a number of other stories, but speaking of Tamara Leach, I guess she won an award, right? So this is something that didn't get a whole lot of attention, but a freedom award. So this is a feather in her cap and something that she can kind of take pride in. The fact that she was awarded this thing says something about Canadian attitude about what Tamara did in the Freedom Convoy.
she raised $20 million. The public is behind her. That's why they put her in jail. That's why they handcuffed her. She didn't do anything wrong. It's pretty embarrassing that they put, look at it. In the case of the prime minister, he was the one that called everybody all the names, and she stood up to him, and she's paying the price for it. There's a lot of things she can't do. She can't come on your show. She can't, talk to me for a column, because these are all things that are restrictions to her.
Yeah, well, she's been silenced, right? And now we've got the biker.
She's still before the courts.
Biker convoy to Ottawa. So it's making some people nervous over there, Joe, including the mayor.
It's veterans. They've been doing the Rolling Thunder Ride for Freedom for many years. I covered it in 1992 for the first time in Washington, D.C. And, I've covered it here. Lots of people from the CAV group, which is Afghanistan veterans. The plan was for them to ride into Ottawa, lay a wreath, hang around for a day, and then ride out. These are not new. They've done these kinds of rides before. It's not a protest. It's kind of more of a, kind of like a commemoration of, veterans and patriotic activities. And, they might have a grievance or two, but it's more about freedom. And they were working with the Ottawa police to have a route to come through, but then the politics got in the way, and the chief of police there and the like, they have pressures on them. I mean, obviously we saw that with Chief Slowly before, and the interim chief has got the same pressures and even more. And so they basically lock the gates and say you can't come in. My advice to them is don't go there. Go to Trenton. There's a cenotaph there for the veterans. Right, it's in a park. It's right off the highway, and do it there. You don't have to do it in Ottawa. It's not worth any more good, solid people ending up before the courts over nothing, over petty politics. Other people push forward and say, no. They have every right to go there. But if you do that, they're going to arrest more people. I just think that, it's a rigged game. And, I don't know. It's a lot to ask veterans to say, you park your bikes. We don't trust you. We don't like you. You're scum. And you can walk down 5 kilometers to the free zone that belongs to you. And you can, celebrate and maybe go to think, we can't stop you from doing that, but we can stop you from riding through. They would never say that to any of their friends, I'll tell you that. And it's pretty appalling. Now, having said that, the group has made a couple of mistakes, I think. And they're falling into the trap, and we'll see how it shakes out. When I say they're falling into the trap, they're pushing up against the man, and the man is powerful, and the man is mean, and doesn't like Canadians, and they want to hurt people, and they want to get them, ruin them, and destroy them, and freeze their bank accounts. They cannot wait to do that. I'm not saying everybody, but there are a core of people that do want that. So if you want to walk into that trap, go ahead. And it's tough for the media to cover it, because it's like the sequel. The truckers thing was the big, Woodstock event, and now you got to cover, the smaller event and that kind of thing. But what do you think? What's your thoughts on it?
It sounds like a nothing burger to me, but I'm glad that they're going to Ottawa. The fact that it's making the mayor nervous and some people there, to me, it shows just how weak the people in Ottawa are.
It's not about making the mayor nervous. It's not that. Free speech.
It appears to be.
And
the cops are saying, hey, you guys better not go here and you better not go there.
No, they're not nervous, Mark. They're not nervous. They know it's all BS. They have eliminated demonstrating, protesting, and free speech in Canada. It's gone.
And speaking of eliminating it, I got to play this clip for you. This is from The View, Sonny Hostin. When Elon Musk says, wow, this is about free speech, seems to me it's about free speech of straight white men. So they want to make it about racism because that's all they do. I mean, again, these people are so vile, so full of rage and hate. They just throw the same thing at people. And I tell you, it's sick. Let's listen to this person and what she said.
In fact, on Twitter, it is predominantly straight white men. So when Elon Musk says, wow, this is about free speech, it seems to me that it's about free speech of straight white men. And so let them have it. Let them just go at it. I enjoy the block button on Twitter. I think it has a real outsized influence in our world because politicians and celebrities are on it.
Well, wait a minute. I mean, if it's about straight white men, what was she doing on it? Using her block button. And by the way, if she says Twitter is about that, that means it was about that before Musk even bought it. So what the hell is this person talking about? She just talking through her ass? Looks to me.
I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even know who she is. So.
Oh, The View. I mean, you're familiar with that.
Yeah,
that show.
I don't watch The View. So.
Oh my God, I don't either. But just to hear these people, they have this platform, and you know what? She's allowed to say what she thinks. But the fact that they're heaping abuse, and now there's also a story in Breitbart where some woke politicians in the UK are starting to warn Musk, you better keep the censorship in place, because Lord knows if you don't, there's going to be hell to pay. Excuse me, but Musk just spent $43 billion on this service. So I think he's allowed to do pretty much what he wants with it. It's his. That's the whole point with taking Twitter,
well, even the
to
president,
private.
Like the Jen Psaki, the president's spokesperson, she went on and on about how they're going to do all these, different measures to censor him and all this kind of stuff. And it's just so ironic. But, he wins every time they talk about it because that's exactly his point. He's got another, 184 billion or something. So if this doesn't work out, he doesn't care. But, it's nice to see a guy like Elon Musk. You know what's amazing about him is that what he decides interests him is what he sees through. And he doesn't do it on a cheap way. Like he puts his money where his mouth is, whether it's the Tesla thing or the, SpaceX, etc. Very important person because he's an independent person and he thinks for himself. He's, it's kind of the way you want to teach your kids. I mean, to think for themselves. It doesn't mean that you can't take some liberal views or have different points of view that aren't, with the narrative, whatever it is. Just think for yourself, and that's what Elon Musk does.
Do you think your buddies in the media will bail on Twitter?
No.
Some of your colleagues?
No, they won't.
So a lot of the stuff we're hearing from Rosie Barton and people like that.
Well, she's not doing her job. Like she's not doing her job. The problem with I don't know Rosie Barton and I don't dislike her or whatever, but when she says something like that, she's what they call making news. She's saying, I'm above the news. I'm not going to use a notepad because it's made of paper, or I'm not going to cover this event because it offends me. I don't get to do that. I cover everybody's event, whatever it is, if it offends me or not. And I write about it and put my point of view in and make sure it's semi-balanced if possible. And so, I'm always surprised when I hear journalists that say, look, I'm bigger than the story. I'm bigger than all of that. I'll do whatever and you're going to do it too, or I'm going to shun the shame you and I'm not going to have you on the show, or, that kind of thing. So there's something broken. Don't forget that Pierre Poilievre, who's, has a good chance to be the next prime minister, perhaps, he's already talked about, canceling the CBC as well, and taking away their funding. And he's been very adamant about that. So there's another one that they're nervous about. I don't think that anybody should be banning anything. If he's going to cancel the CBC, Rosie had better be working hard to try to stop that by being fair and do good journalism, and to use all. It's up to her what she does, but I just don't think that not using Twitter and saying I'm going to cancel.
Yeah, they just sound like kids, though. I'm taking my toys and going home.
Yeah.
Here's Elon Musk tweeting again, Joe. By free speech, I simply mean that which matches the law. I'm against censorship that goes far beyond the law. If people want less free speech, they will ask government to pass laws to that effect. Well, the blackface regime is more than happy to push censorship online. Then he goes on to say, therefore, going beyond the law is contrary to the will of the people. We already have laws in place that prevent the ramping up of hate, right? The pushing of genocide and that sort of thing.
The fact that Elon feels he needs to explain that now because he's so cryptic, and that means that he's nervous about it. Now he's put his 44 billion on the line, right? So now it's a different game for him. He's got to be more careful because he knows the power of the left. He knows they mean business. He knows that they'll put him in prison if they can. They'll destroy everything that he has. He knows that. So he's already on defense there when he something like a tweet like that. He'd be better to not do that and just forget about what they say, because what they say just makes them feel good. It doesn't mean anything. They'll be on Twitter as long as Twitter is offering something for people to be on. And it's just like I mean, people talk about different boycotts and things like that. They're up to them if they want to do it. But I'm not a big boycotter. I just I can handle it. Whatever they say on the CBC or CNN or in any of the legacy media radio shows or whatever. I don't have to agree with it, but I don't need to have it censored. I can make my own decision on whether I think it's right or wrong, and so can all Canadians. Canadians they're not dumb. They know what they're hearing, and they make their own call on it.
Yeah, interesting. Senator Leo Housakis has been talking about the fact that Canadians have been denied entry back into the country. Presumably, this is the issue around the vaccine status. But I want to hear this clip. Let's hear Senator Housakis talk about this issue.
My question is for the government leader, Senator Gold. Earlier this year, Public Safety Minister Marco Mendocino stated that he would issue a clear directive to CBSA that Canadians returning home would have the option of presenting in person to border agents, including presenting any required documentation in hard copy, rather than being penalized for not using the ArriveCAN app. Senator Gold, Canadians who are arriving by air are still being refused boarding by airlines unless they have used the app, and Canadians still face penalties, financial penalties, if they arrive at land crossings without having used the app. My question, Senator Gold, is simple. Why has this still not been communicated to CBSA agents?
Senator Gold.
Well, Senator, thank you for your question. I have to make inquiries as to your question and get back as quickly as I can.
All right, so he doesn't know, but I know for a fact that is true, because my brother, who is fully vaxxed, he left my place in Florida, went home, but because he had an issue with his ArriveCAN, the launching of his ArriveCAN app on his phone, he couldn't get on the plane. And he had to.
It's a police state. I mean, I don't know why you're so surprised all the time, Mark. Canada is a police state, and if you don't do what the government says, even though they have no business telling you what you put in your own body, they won't let you leave the country. They won't let you come back. And you're a Canadian citizen. When you come back to the border, they obviously should make sure that you're legal and that you didn't any violations, and they'll let you go home. It's not their business. They can't fine you because you're Canadian. But because the courts are rigged and everybody is just accepting it, it's a police state. We live in a state that you can't, you're not free in it. You can't demonstrate. You can't protest. You can't say what you think. And you can't go on an airplane, or you can't go visit your ailing family. I've got family that are having health issues. And there are family members that I have that may want to travel here or there, and they can't. They can't get on a train. I've got elderly relatives that can't get on a train that aren't vaccinated, things like that. That's not right. And yet, look at the big narrative that they put out this week is that the unvaccinated are causing trouble for the vaccinated. That was a study that the U of T did. There's nothing in the report that validated any of that. It's all just basically bunk. It's a lie. But it does some damage. It makes people, it's sort of a scarlet letter thing. Look, at the people that did this, they're very, very evil to think that they're going to separate people. They're keeping this thing going. And in Ontario, as soon as Premier Ford is reelected, if that's what happens, they're going to turn around and they're going to bring mask mandates. They're going to make that third shot booster, which is a third shot. They'll make the fourth shot mandatory. In essence, mandatory, but to be fully vaccinated, you'll have to have the 3 shots. They have no intention of giving up the power. It's based on nothing. There's hardly anybody in the hospital. Everybody's had this Omicron now. And the best part of all is, or not the best part, the worst part really, is the fact that people that are triple vaccinated that are getting not COVID just once, but twice and 3 times. And people that are unvaccinated, a lot of them haven't got COVID. You're not allowed to look into it. You're not allowed to comment on it. You lose your job. You lose your career. You lose all your friends. They might freeze your bank account if there's anything even left in your bank account.
What a divisive thing, though. Mixing with the unvaccinated. Well, I guess they're saying, divide, right? You
You know
people
what's
go over
happening on
there,
Friday?
you people over there. It's so insidious. It's so ugly. And
On
so
Friday,
such
on
an
Friday,
awful way to treat people.
yeah, it's unconstitutional.
Yeah.
But they're doing it because you can't do anything. What are you going to do? You got to go with your motorcycle to Ottawa, Mark, and protest it. I mean, you got to go with your truck. You have to take it. It's just like what's going on in Shanghai.
And
It's
Beijing now.
basically a
Yeah, they're
version
doing it
of
in
that.
Beijing, mass COVID testing in Beijing. So I think this is China sending it's a dog whistle to the West saying, you guys better lock down over there
When you
because
live in a
we're
police
not
state,
ready to go back to normal.
state, you don't have freedom.
That's
We
true.
don't have freedom in Canada. We just don't have it. You're not allowed to go to Ottawa to protest. You're not allowed to drive your motorcycle down there. You're not allowed. We don't have basic freedoms anymore, and people are okay with it. They let it go. The media doesn't care.
Well, a lot of us are not okay with it, Joe, and I know you're not as well.
Well, of course
So
not. I mean, because the bottom line is that we have those rights, and they've taken them away, and nobody can do anything about it. This Friday, I was trying to say this earlier. They're having the tribunal, which is a kind of an arbitration with the Toronto Police Association and the Toronto Police over the, I guess you want to call them unvaccinated officers and staff. A lot of them it wasn't that they haven't given their status, if you will, but they're unemployed basically. They're not getting paid, and this arbitration is really important to whether or not they're going to get their jobs back. In Ottawa, they brought them back. Other places have brought back a few people. It's about 100 in Toronto. These are people with kids and everything else that have taken the stand. So we'll have to keep our eye on that to see what they do. And I'm sure we don't know. We don't want to speculate, but let's hope that they let them back because we've got firefighters, we've got paramedics, TTC, drivers, etc., all out of work. And for what? Because they didn't get vaccinated or they didn't disclose their status.
Yeah,
so
it's brutal.
Let's hope for that. That thing. Can I just talk about what I've written or what I'm writing about?
Absolutely. No, you've got it. You've got it. I've got your banner up. And so talk about what you're working on and what the readers to your column can expect.
Well, I talked to a veterinarian who he and his daughter went to Ukraine, and what they saw there was disturbing to them in terms of all the dogs and cats and other animals too, that were basically victims of war and left behind with nothing to eat and having all kinds of issues, including PTSD. And I've written a column on that because he's trying to get some interest together to get a flight to go over there and rescue 150 animals and bring them back here and send them out for adoption. I thought it was a good initiative, and I thought I would write about it. This is not really a story about the politics of the war, but it's about victims of war and a reminder. Obviously we've done lots of story and have great concern over the humanitarian crisis, refugees and like, but this is about dogs and cats. And I think that people might find it interesting, and we've also got a video on it.
Check that story out in the pages of the Toronto Sun. All right, thank you, Joe. Appreciate this as always.
Have a great rest of the week.
Check out Joe's stellar reporting in the pages of the Toronto Sun. All right, let's take a brief commercial break, shall we? Back with more on Newstalk Saga 960 and the Marc Patrone Show after this.